The mid-'80s were a grand time in the good old US of A. Prince, U2, and innumerable hair metal bands were all simultaneously reaching their peak awesomeness. Mary Lou Retton vaulted her way into our hearts, and a concert far greater than Woodstock happened on 2 continents in one day, and not even Phil Collins could ruin it. John Hughes cranked out one classic motion picture after another, and for some reason, I went through a phase where red glasses seemed like a good idea. And employment from new business startups soared. Around 10% of business owners at that time cited government rules and oversight as their #1 problem. Flash forward to today. I won't suggest that today's cultural rot is tied to government overregulation, but ask those same business owners what their biggest problem is today. You guessed it, dear member, burdensome regulations. And if the impact of all these regulations were as simple as making entrepreneurs grumpy, we may well shrug our shoulders and move on with our lives. But it seems like small business formation, long the engine of job growth in our fair union, is being smothered in a blanket of protection our government has fashioned from cozy good intentions. We've got the best chance we've had in years to change the game on regulations, but we need your help. Stay tuned to learn how you can help. Look, not all regulations are bad. Without regulations, food producers could sell canned mushrooms with more than 20 maggots per 100 grams. And 20 maggots is about all I can take in one serving. But aside from the chilling effect on entrepreneurism, hyper-aggressive regulators are a threat to our very democracy. If that sounds a little too Alex Jones for you, think about the difference between regulations and legislation. Back in the 80s, when we were actually still taught civics in school, we learned about the separation of powers. Congress passes the law, the president executes the law. Now, the president can consult with the Congress to influence the shape of that law, but the president cannot simply create new law. And that's how it's supposed to be. While members of Congress, despite what you think, are largely well-intentioned and smart, they aren't well suited to be subject matter experts on everything that comes before them. Very often, the laws Congress passes allow the federal bureaucracy wide latitude in how the law gets implemented. Implementing the law requires writing regulations. So that's the tension. If Congress writes the laws to be too specific, they will likely make mistakes or have unintended consequences, and fixing them requires passing a change in the law. It's hard to pass laws. If Congress leaves too much latitude to the federal bureaucracy, which is the way it's being done today, the president can use the pen and phone strategy made famous by Barack Obama to drive changes in the law without the oversight of Congress. Right now, if Congress doesn't like a regulation the president creates, they have 2 areas of recourse. They can change the law, which is again a lengthy and difficult process, or they can use what's called the Congressional Review Act. It would take way too long to explain how the Congressional Review Act works, but suffice it to say, since its creation in 1996, it's effectively rolled back a regulation exactly once. It doesn't work. Fortunately, we have a better option before us. On January 5th, the House passed H.R. 25, the REINS Act. In Washington, you're nobody unless you come up with a really good acronym. REINS stands for Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny. It kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Longtime NAED government activists are familiar with the REINS Act, but for the rest of you, the REINS Act is an effort by Congress to recapture its legislative power from the executive branch. Put simply, the REINS Act would require a simple majority vote from both houses of Congress before a major regulation can go into effect. It doesn't change the regulatory review process. It just adds a layer of oversight by elected officials. The Secretary of Health and Human Services never stands for election. I don't know about you, but I would prefer more oversight by people I can vote out of office than by the Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for Maggot Counting at the Food and Drug Administration. The bottom line is there's a long-term trend in this country, regardless of who's in the White House, for Congress to make fewer decisions and the President to make more. In 2015, the Code of Federal Regulations weighed in at around 175,000 pages. That's about 8 times the size it was in the 60s. In 2010, the World Bank ranked the United States as the 8th easiest country to start a business in. Now we're 51st. Any way you slice it, we're not as competitive as we once were at a time when the economy is more globally connected than ever. The New Yorker posted a column bashing the REINS Act shortly after it passed the House. The George Soros-funded Center for American Progress hates it too. And that's probably a pretty good sign that we're onto a good idea there. The New Yorker piece trotted out the typical list of deplorables as being behind the REINS Act, most notably reliable bogeymen, big corporations, and the Koch brothers. What many progressive interest groups don't understand about regulations, or more accurately, what they won't admit, is that strict regulations are very often great barriers to entry, discouraging small, entrepreneurial firms from getting into an industry. Global corporations have a far easier time with regulatory compliance than small companies. The fact is, excessive regulation slows business growth and protects big incumbent firms. Who do you think has more influence on how food processing regulations are written? Nestle or Tasty Cakes? The bottom line is we can make a change in that regulatory game now. We need your help getting action on the REINS Act in the U.S. Senate. Though H.R. 25 passed the House, the path forward is less certain in the Senate. Unlike previous years, we know that a President-elect Trump will sign the bill into law. Democrats will almost certainly try to filibuster the bill in the Senate. That's why we want you to call or email your U.S. senators now. Tell them to support the REINS Act and to call for a vote on it. You can use our Tell Congress site to send an email or to find more information on the bill. Emails are great, but nothing beats a phone call from a business person. You can call the U.S. Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 and ask to be connected to either of your senator's offices. Don't be intimidated. You will be talking to a 20-something kid whose only job is to listen and keep count of the fors and againsts. They don't want to argue with you. They talk to angry and unreasonable people all day and welcome rational conversations. As always, if you want help getting prepared to reach out to your lawmakers, call me at 314-812-5320. That's it for this time. Join us again for more information on bills coming up before Congress. Again, thanks for watching and thanks for supporting NAED.